wrongful
decades in
convictions,
prison for a crime she did not commit,
framing innocent people,
police officers allegedly planting evidence,
and the utter failure of the criminal justice system.
Back with the spoon. He says it tests positive for methamphetamine. So I'm going to go to jail.
Cases of this nature are unfortunately becoming pretty common among the police.
What you mean step up? What are you stopping us, sir?
These incidents end up hurting and destroying the lives of innocent people. Law enforcement authorities often act with impunity and end up getting away with some quite vicious and violent acts. But every so often, they get caught and are made to face the consequences.
But he says this is not the end of their legal fight.
Number 1. Jamal True Love. The story of Jamal True Love is a tragic one. True Love was a man with a dream. He was an aspiring actor and hip-hop artist, making an appearance in the VH1 reality television show I Love New York Too. But in October 2010, Jamal's life came to a crashing halt when the San Francisco Police Department had him convicted and arrested for the 2007 murder of his friend and neighbor, Sue Kuka, in a low-income housing project.
Never in a million years I would have thought that they were going to charge me for Sale's murder. I never talked to no detective, no police officer, no DA, nobody.
Jamal was sentenced to 50 years to life in prison. But there were some glaring holes in Jamal's conviction. True Love insisted from the beginning that he was innocent. There was also no credible physical or forensic evidence that pointed toward him being the culprit. The only real evidence that the prosecution could put forward was a key eyewitness to the murder, Priscilla Lualamaga. But even her account of the incident was chock full of doubts. Lualamaga claimed that just before 11 p.m. on July 23, 2007, she saw the shooting from a second-floor window when the street below was shrouded in darkness. Despite that, she was unable to identify True Love as the culprit from a photo wall lineup, which, as it turns out, had also been fabricated by the detectives to frame True Love. According to Lualamaga's testimony, the detectives said that they had identified the shooter and would show her his photo. Contrary to standard procedure, the 6 photos in the lineup included people that Lualamaga knew and had not identified as Kuka's shooter. In her statement, Lualamaga's identification of True Love as the shooter was, "He looks like the person that could have shot Kuka, and I want to say it's him." It turns out that Lualamaga had other motives to incriminate Jamal. The prosecution provided Lualamaga and her family with over $60,000 for their living expenses. Later evidence also revealed that the detectives had a lead on another suspect, which they did not pursue any further. All of these negligences and fabrications led to True Love being imprisoned for more than 6 years. According to his lawyer, Alex Reisman, True Love spent his days locked away in maximum security prisons in Southern California, hundreds of miles away from his family. He was also stabbed in jail, according to Reisman. Despite everything, Jamal never lost hope. He had filed an appeal with the court. Thankfully, the California Appeals Court overturned Jamal's conviction in 2014 and ordered that a new trial take place. He was acquitted in his retrial in 2015. But that was not enough. Jamal was wrong, and he wanted justice.
No matter how hard it gets. Yeah, better move out the way, cause I'm coming with harder hits. My head is as hard as a brick, but I'm harder than all it is. You better move, you might get knocked out.
In 2016, he sued the city of San Francisco, and in 2018, a jury in Oakland found the leading detectives involved with Jamal's case guilty. The detectives were charged with fabricating evidence and failing to disclose exculpatory evidence. In 2019, Jamal was awarded $13.1 million in settlement money by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Since then, True Love has gone back to pursuing his love for film and media, making an appearance in the critically acclaimed film The Last Black Man in San Francisco. But Jamal still has lingering trauma from everything that he went through. On Instagram, he wrote, "There's nothing I could do to make up for that time I missed. No amount of money could ever reverse the time I missed with my kids and the effect that it's had on their upbringing and our relationship." Number 2. Richard Rosario. In 1998, Richard Rosario was convicted for the fatal shooting of 17-year-old George Collazo in 1996 in the Bronx. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. Rosario maintained that he knew nothing about the murder and was 1,000 miles away, in Florida, when the crime occurred. He even gave out the names of 13 alibis for his defense, but no one ever reached out to them. So how did Rosario end up getting convicted in the first place? Well, the sentence hinged on the testimony of 2 out of 3 eyewitnesses who had picked Rosario's face out of a picture book. The third eyewitness said that while he may have been able to identify the suspect, it was not Rosario. According to his lawyers, Mr. Rosario returned to New York City on a bus when he heard that the authorities were searching for him. He contacted the police and gave them the names of 13 witnesses who could confirm his alibi. However, the police did not investigate these witnesses, and Mr. Rosario was accused of murder. Although funds were assigned for Rosario's defense to verify his alibi, no further investigation took place due to a mix-up about whether the money had been assigned or not. Years went by with multiple appeals to retry Rosario's case, but they all ended in failure one way or another. But things changed in 2016. Rosario's lawyers filed another appeal challenging his conviction. A popular docuseries started airing on NBC's Dateline called 13 Alibis, which made a huge impact on Rosario's case. The docuseries interviewed some of the witnesses and helped Rosario get a retrial. Ms. Clark, the new district attorney, agreed to reopen the case and interviewed some of the alibi witnesses. After serving 20 years in prison, Rosario's conviction was finally vacated.
If I had to spend every day of my life in prison to prove my innocence, I would have been prepared to do that.
A year later, after his release, Rosario filed a civil lawsuit against the city of New York and the detectives involved for wrongful conviction and imprisonment. Rosario claimed that the detectives had malintent and that his arrest was a consequence of their misconduct. After a 2-week-long trial, the jury gave its verdict that one of the officers violated Rosario's constitutional rights. He was awarded $5 million by the federal court for his wrongful conviction and damages. On a podcast with Dan Slepland, Rosario said, "No amount of money can give me all those precious years back. They ruined my life." Number 3. Rodney King. In 1991, Los Angeles police officers were caught on tape brutally beating Rodney King, an African-American man. The cops ordered King, who was out on parole at the time for robbery, out of the car and assaulted him with kicks and batons. The vicious mauling of the poor man continued for about 15 minutes, while about a dozen other officers just stood there watching. King suffered lifelong injuries from the incident, including skull fractures, broken bones, broken teeth, and permanent brain damage. 4 officers were charged with excessive use of force and brought to trial. But as if this case wasn't already harrowing enough, the jury ended up ruling in favor of the officers and found them not guilty. The people of LA were in shock. During this time, the city was the center of major racial and economic disparity. Tensions were already running high, and this incident ended up becoming the straw that broke the camel's back.
Reported structure fire for Light 464. We're taking some pretty heavy flak on Adams about Hobart. There are 3 separate structure fires through the window.
The people of LA poured out into the streets in protest. The following 5 days were some of the most violent displays of public anger in the country's history. Seeing the whole city out in his support, Rodney King himself came out with his lawyer outside of Beverly Hills Courthouse and said, "People, I just want to say, can we all get along? Can we all get along?"
Can we all get along?
At the end of the 5 days of uproar, there were more than 50 riot-related deaths, including 10 people who were shot and killed by LAPD officers and National Guardsmen. More than 2,000 people were injured, and nearly 6,000 alleged looters and arsonists were arrested. Things slowly returned to normalcy in the days that followed, but Rodney King still fought on. A year after the first trial in 1992, the 4 officers were again brought to a federal civil rights trial. This time, 2 of them, Kuhn and Powell, were convicted and sentenced to 30 months in prison. In 1994, the case was presented before another jury. King's lawyers demanded that the city compensate the victim with $15 million. King, however, was ready to settle for $9.6 million, with the city making a counteroffer of $1.25 million. Finally, the negotiations ended, and Rodney King walked away with $3.8 million in settlement, with the city accepting liability for the damages. The compensatory damages from the city are intended to cover lost earnings and expenses for the treatment of broken bones and neurological and psychological damage. Experts at the hearings estimated his losses at somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million over his lifetime. King was an unemployed construction worker when he got assaulted. His lawyer even said that his client will never be able to work again. The two other officers who were tried and convicted were Theodore Brazeno, who remained suspended without pay from the force, and Timothy E. Wynn, a rookie who was dismissed. None of the four officers rejoined the police after the incident. These cases are only a drop in the ocean of both reported and unreported cases of abuse of power by the police. While we all think of the men in uniform as our protectors and saviors, incidents like these only shake our confidence in the authorities. If you want to watch more such videos, subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time.